June 1944. A German panzer commander stares at his intelligence map in Normandy. His hand shakes, not from fear of the invasion itself, but from one name circled in red ink: George Patton. The general has been warned about for 2 years, the one man who fights like a German. Fast, ruthless, unpredictable, and somewhere across the English Channel he's coming. But Patton wasn't the only American general who made Wehrmacht commanders lose sleep. By 1943, the German High Command had a list: 5 names. 5 American generals had shattered their arrogance, broken their lines, and forced them to rethink everything they thought they knew about American fighting ability. This is that list, ranked exactly as the Germans feared them. From the tactical genius who turned artillery into an industrial nightmare, to the air commander who burned their cities to ash, to the one general who terrified them more than anyone else in the entire Allied command. This is the story the Germans told themselves when the lights went out. The 5 Americans proved they weren't facing amateurs anymore. They were facing equals, and in some cases superiors. Let's start with number 5. Number 5. Major General Terry Allen. The German 10th Panzer Division had never experienced anything like it. Tunisia, April 1943, 200 hours, total darkness, no moon. Then suddenly artillery, American artillery, but not from fixed positions, moving barrages, advancing with infantry. And the infantry wasn't waiting for dawn. They were attacking through the night, infiltrating, flanking, hitting German positions from angles that shouldn't have been possible in pitch blackness. This wasn't how Americans were supposed to fight. German battalion commanders screamed into field telephones, "Who is commanding these troops?" The answer came back from intelligence: Major General Terry Allen, 1st Infantry Division, the big red one. And the Germans added a note to their files: "This one is different." Terry Allen didn't look like a general. He looked like a brawler who'd stumbled into an officers' school by mistake. Rough, crude, perpetually at odds with higher command. He drank, he swore, he broke protocol constantly. Eisenhower and Bradley both considered him a problem. But there was one group of people who absolutely loved Terry Allen, his soldiers, and one group who absolutely feared him, the Germans, because Allen had figured out something fundamental that most American commanders hadn't. The Germans owned the day. They had better tanks, better tactics, better coordination. They'd been fighting for 4 years. American units were still learning. So Allen changed the rules. He made his 1st Infantry Division masters of night combat, an art that the Wehrmacht had largely ignored because they rarely needed it during their blitzkrieg victories. Allen trained his men relentlessly: night marches, night attacks, night navigation without lights. He pushed them until they could move through darkness like wolves, until they could infiltrate German positions while enemy soldiers slept, until they could turn the one advantage Americans had, fresh, aggressive infantry, into a weapon that worked when German coordination broke down. North Africa became Allen's proving ground. Battle of El Geta, April 1943. Allen's division smashed into German positions at night, again and again and again. The Germans were unable to coordinate counterattacks in the darkness. Their superior armor was blind. Their officers couldn't maintain control. And Allen's infantry just kept coming, waves of them, fearless, aggressive, closing to bayonet range before German machine gunners even saw them. A captured German officer from the Hermann Goering division stated that Allied intelligence. His words were translated and filed. We called them the night demons. They attacked when we couldn't see, when our panzers were useless, when our officers couldn't rally us. They were the first Americans who truly frightened us. But it wasn't just night attacks. Allen understood something else the Germans respected: momentum. Never stop, never let the enemy recover. Never give them time to think or reorganize or bring up reserves. Hit them again. Keep hitting them until they break. Sicily, July 1943. The 1st Infantry Division under Allen drove inland from the beaches faster than any other American unit. They didn't consolidate. They didn't wait for supplies to catch up. They just moved. German commanders trying to organize defensive lines found Allen's troops already behind them, already cutting roads, already overrunning headquarters. The German 15th Panzergrenadier Division reported to Hermann Goering personally. The American 1st Division does not behave like other American units. They attack with German speed and initiative. Their commander understands mobile warfare. That was the highest compliment a German could give. But here's what made Allen truly dangerous from the German perspective. He was expendable to his own side, and he knew it. Allen clashed constantly with Bradley, with Eisenhower, with every superior officer who tried to make him follow standard procedure. He didn't care about his career. He cared about winning, and he cared about his men, so he pushed boundaries other generals wouldn't. When Bradley ordered a standard frontal assault, Allen would add a night flanking maneuver without permission. When Eisenhower demanded caution, Allen attacked. His division took heavier casualties than others because they fought harder, faster, and more aggressively. But they also won. Every single time they won. The Germans noticed this pattern. A Wehrmacht intelligence assessment from August 1943 noted, General Allen commands as if he has nothing to lose. This makes him extremely dangerous. He will take risks that other American commanders avoid. He cannot be predicted using standard American doctrine. And that unpredictability scared them, because the German army ran on prediction, on doctrine, on knowing what the enemy would do and countering it. Allen threw all of that out. He fought on instinct, on aggression, on pure forward momentum. The Germans couldn't model it, couldn't plan for it, could only react to it. And by the time they reacted, Allen was already somewhere else, hitting them from a new direction. Sicily again. July 1943. Allen's 1st Division reached Palermo days before German intelligence thought possible. How? Allen ignored supply lines, ignored standard rest periods, ignored everything except the map and the objective. His men ate captured German rations, drank from Sicilian wells, slept in shifts while moving. And they won the race to Palermo by sheer audacity. A German supply officer captured near Messina told interrogators, "We thought we had 2 more days before the Americans could reach us. We were fortifying, setting up ammunition dumps. Then suddenly they were in the town." Their general must be insane or brilliant. We could not decide which. The answer was both. Allen's career ended badly. Bradley relieved him of command in August 1943. Too difficult, too aggressive, too many casualties, too many broken protocols. The official reason was rest. The real reason was that Allen didn't fit the American army's image of what a general should be. But the Germans never forgot him. When Allied intelligence recovered German training documents from late 1943, they found updated night combat doctrine, new procedures for 24-hour perimeter security, enhanced protocols for rear area defense against infiltration. All of it stemmed directly from Allen's attacks in Tunisia and Sicily. The Germans had learned, the hard way, Americans could fight at night, could move with German speed, could hit with German aggression. And one American general, rough, crude, disobedient Terry Allen, had taught them that lesson with blood and fire and relentless forward momentum that never, ever stopped. The Germans ranked him 5th on their list of most feared American generals. They would have ranked him higher if Bradley hadn't fired him first. Now let's talk about number 4, the general who turned artillery into something the Germans had never seen before. Industrial-scale destruction that made even veteran Wehrmacht officers pray for mercy. Number 4, Lieutenant General James van Fleet Huichen Forrest. November 1944. A German battalion commander crouches in his bunker. The walls shake. Artillery, American artillery, but not normal artillery. This is something else, something systematic, something overwhelming. The shells don't stop. 10 minutes, 20 minutes, an hour, 2 hours. The forest above him is being erased from existence. Trees shattered into splinters. Earth churned into moon dust. Every German position is mapped. Every German bunker targeted. Every German machine gun nest was obliterated. And then, suddenly, silence. The German commander knows what comes next. Infantry, American infantry will attack now. He grabs his rifle, orders his surviving men to positions. They stumble through the smoke, half-deaf, shell-shocked. But ready, nothing happens. 5 minutes, 10 minutes, 15 minutes. Then the artillery starts again. Another 2 hours, more shells, more destruction, more systematic erasure of everything above ground. The German commander realizes with growing horror what's happening. The Americans aren't coming. They're just killing, efficiently, industrially, without risk to their own men. This is Lieutenant General James Van Fleet's signature, and the Germans learn to fear it more than anything except Patton's tanks. Van Fleet wasn't flashy, wasn't famous, didn't give inspiring speeches or pose for propaganda photos. He was a quiet, methodical officer who looked like a middle-aged banker and fought like a mathematician. He calculated. He planned. He used artillery the way Ford used assembly lines, as an industrial process that produced one output: dead Germans. The Wehrmacht had never encountered anything like it. German doctrine emphasized maneuver, speed, combined arms. Artillery was important, sure, but it was support, a tool to enable infantry and armor. Van Fleet reversed the equation. He made artillery the primary weapon. Everything else just held ground while his guns did the real work. And he had the guns to do it. By late 1944, American industrial production had flooded Europe with artillery. Thousands of tubes, millions of shells. Van Fleet looked at those numbers and asked a simple question: why attack when you can just destroy? So he did. Van Fleet's standard procedure became legendary among both sides. First, fix the enemy in place. Use infantry to identify all German positions. Pin them down, make them defend. Then bring up every available artillery piece within range, and Van Fleet always made sure there were dozens. Finally, unleash hell. Not for 15 minutes, for hours, days sometimes. Systematic, targeted, overwhelming. And only then, when German positions were rubble and German soldiers were dead or broken, would Van Fleet send infantry forward to occupy the ground. The Germans called it Van Fleet ammunition, a term that spread through the Wehrmacht like a curse. Captured German officers described it to Allied interrogators with something approaching awe. One Panzergrenadier Major from the 116th Panzer Division said, "We understood American industrial strength when we saw Van Fleet's artillery. It wasn't warfare. It was extermination. You could not survive it. You could only pray it targeted another sector." Van Fleet demonstrated his method perfectly during the crossing of the Roer River in February 1945. The Germans had prepared elaborate defenses: bunkers, machine gun nests, artillery positions covering all likely crossing points. They expected a difficult battle. They were ready. Van Fleet spent 4 days preparing his artillery plan. He mapped every German position, calculated fields of fire, assigned specific targets to specific batteries, stockpiled 100,000 shells. Then, on February 23, 1945, at 2:45 hours, he began. The barrage lasted 6 hours. Not random shelling, systematic destruction. Every German bunker was hit by multiple shells. Every German artillery position was silenced. Every German machine gun nest was buried. Van Fleet's fire control officers walked the barrage forward meter by meter, erasing the German defensive line like an eraser moving across a chalkboard. By 8:45 hours, the Roer River defenses, which German commanders had expected to hold for 2 weeks, no longer existed. American infantry crossed in assault boats and found only silence, smoke, craters, and German survivors stumbling around in shock, too broken to fight, too disoriented to even surrender properly. A German colonel from the 363rd Volksgrenadier Division, captured that afternoon, told his interrogators, "I have fought in Poland, France, Russia, and now Germany. I have survived Katyusha rockets, Russian artillery, British bombardment. Nothing compares to Van Fleet. He doesn't attack positions. He deletes them from existence." But here's what made Van Fleet truly terrifying to German commanders. He was patient. Most American generals wanted fast results. quick breakthroughs, aggressive advances. Van Fleet didn't care about speed. He cared about efficiency, about minimizing American casualties while maximizing German destruction. He would spend a week preparing an artillery plan if it meant saving his infantry. German commanders couldn't exploit this patience. Normally, when an attack was slow, defenders could bring up reserves, reorganize, counterattack. But Van Fleet's artillery made that impossible. Any German movement brought immediate fire. Any German concentration was targeted and destroyed. His forward observers were everywhere. His fire support was instant. The Germans were fixed in place, watching American artillery move into position, knowing exactly what was coming, unable to do anything about it. A Wehrmacht tactical assessment from March 1945, recovered after the war, stated, "General Van Fleet represents the future of American warfare. He has solved the fundamental problem of casualties by replacing soldiers with shells. German forces cannot survive his methods because they require maneuver, and Van Fleet eliminates maneuver. Fixed positions are destroyed. Mobile forces are targeted and eliminated. There is no counter-tactic except retreat, and even retreat falls under his artillery umbrella." That assessment wasn't just tactical analysis. It was a surrender dressed up in military language. The Germans knew Van Fleet had beaten them. Not through a brilliant maneuver, not through technological superiority, but through simple, ruthless, industrial-scale application of firepower. He turned warfare into mathematics, and the math always resulted in dead Germans. Huichen Forest, the Roer River, the Rhineland. In every battle Van Fleet commanded, German casualties from artillery exceeded casualties from all other causes combined, by factors of 3 or 4 to 1. His infantry barely had to fight. They just walked forward after the guns finished. One German regimental commander, interviewed by American historians after the war, said it simply, "We feared Patton because he moved like lightning. We feared others for different reasons. But we feared Van Fleet because his method could not be stopped. You cannot dodge artillery that falls for hours. You cannot counterattack when your positions no longer exist. You can only die, efficiently, industrially, as Van Fleet intended." That efficiency earned him the number 4 spot on the German list, but if you want to see true fear, you have to look at number 3. The general who didn't fight on the ground at all. The man who commanded from the sky and brought hell itself down on German cities. Number 3. General Curtis, LeMay, August 1943. Regensburg, Germany. A Luftwaffe pilot named Franz Stigler sits in his Bf 109 cockpit at 25,000 feet. He's already shot down 2 B-17 bombers this morning. His ammunition is low. Fuel is getting critical. He should return to base. Then he sees it. The formation, not a scattered group of bombers, not the usual mess of American aircraft struggling to maintain position. This is something new. Something different, tight, disciplined. 300 bombers flying in staggered boxes, each bomber positioned to provide overlapping defensive fire. It's beautiful, geometric, perfect, and absolutely terrifying. Stigler radios his wingman, "Who planned this?" The response comes back, "A general named LeMay, Curtis LeMay." And that's when Stigler knows. The Luftwaffe is in real trouble. Curtis LeMay didn't look like he should command anything. He was stocky, blunt-featured, with a permanent scowl that made him look perpetually angry at the universe. He rarely spoke. When he did, it was in short, brutal sentences that ended conversations rather than starting them. His nickname among B-17 crews was Iron Ass, not because he was tough on himself, but because he was absolutely merciless toward everyone under his command. The Germans learned to fear him within months of his arrival in Europe. Before LeMay, American bombing raids were disasters. B-17s flew in loose formations. German fighters tore through them. Losses ran 20, 30, sometimes 40% per mission. The 8th Air Force was bleeding to death over Germany. Crews weren't completing their 25-mission tour. They were dying, quickly, horribly. LeMay looked at the numbers and asked one question, "Why are we dying?" The answer was simple: bad tactics. Loose formations meant isolated bombers. Isolated bombers meant vulnerable bombers. Vulnerable bombers meant dead crews. So LeMay invented something new, the combat box. It sounds simple now. It was revolutionary then. LeMay arranged B-17s in tight, staggered formations where every bomber could bring its defensive guns to bear on attacking fighters from any angle. 12 to 21 bombers per box, multiple boxes per raid. Each bomber was positioned so its 50 caliber machine guns overlapped with those of others, creating fields of fire so dense that German fighters couldn't penetrate without flying through literal walls of bullets. The first time LeMay's combat box flew over Germany, Luftwaffe pilots attacked the same way they always did. Head-on passes, diving attacks, standard tactics that had worked for months. They were slaughtered. A Luftwaffe after-action report from September 1943, captured later in the war, described it. American bombers now fly in fortress formations. Our standard attacks are ineffective. Fighters who press attacks suffer 40 to 60% losses. The American general commanding these formations has changed the tactical equation entirely. That general was LeMay, and he was just getting started. LeMay didn't just improve formations. He changed American bombing philosophy. Before him, bombers flew high to avoid flak. They used evasive maneuvers to avoid fighters. They prioritized survival over target destruction. LeMay looked at that approach and called it cowardice. He issued new orders: fly straight. No evasive action during bombing runs. No matter what. No matter how much flak. No matter how many fighters. Fly straight so the bombardiers can aim properly, because missed targets mean you have to come back tomorrow. And coming back tomorrow means more men die. The crews hated him for it. Flying straight through flak zones meant certain casualties. Pilots watched their friends' bombers explode beside them, saw wings torn off, saw aircraft spiral down trailing fire, all because LeMay demanded they maintain formation and bearing. But the bombs hit their targets, and that's what the Germans feared most, because LeMay wasn't just killing German civilians. He was destroying German industrial capacity. His bombers hit ball-bearing plants in Schweinfurt, aircraft factories in Regensburg, oil refineries in Ploesti. With accuracy the Germans hadn't thought Americans capable of achieving. Every raid LeMay planned hit exactly what it was supposed to hit, and German production dropped accordingly. Albert Speer, German Minister of Armaments, wrote in his memoirs after the war, "The American bombing campaign became truly dangerous only after General LeMay implemented his tactics. Before him, we could repair damage and restore production within weeks. After him, entire industrial sectors were eliminated permanently." He understood that strategic bombing only works if targets are destroyed completely, not damaged, destroyed. That was the key to LeMay's philosophy: all or nothing. Either destroy the target completely or don't bother attacking at all. Half measures just wasted fuel and killed crews for nothing. Schweinfurt, October 14, 1943. LeMay planned the raid personally. 291 B-17s. Target: ball-bearing plants that produced over half of Germany's ball bearings. Essential for tanks, for aircraft, for everything mechanical in the German war machine. The raid was a bloodbath. 60 B-17s were shot down. 600 men were killed or captured. Losses were so severe that the 8th Air Force suspended daylight bombing for weeks, but the plants were destroyed. German ball-bearing production dropped 43%, tank production slowed, aircraft production fell. The entire German military supply chain hiccuped because LeMay had done exactly what he set out to do: destroy the target completely. And that's when the Germans realized they were facing something new. Not a man trying to survive, not a commander trying to minimize losses, but a general who would accept any casualties, his own or German civilians, to achieve his objective. A captured Luftwaffe intelligence officer told interrogators in 1944, "We feared many American commanders, but LeMay was different. He was willing to sacrifice anything to destroy us. His own men, German women and children." Entire cities. He approached warfare as total war in the truest sense. That made him more German than most German generals, and that terrified us. LeMay proved this philosophy again and again. February 1944, he took command of the 3rd Bombardment Division. His first order, double the number of bombers per raid. His second order, hit multiple targets simultaneously so German fighters couldn't concentrate. His third order, fly through weather that would have grounded previous commanders. German fighter pilots found themselves facing 1,000-bomber raids, formations so large they stretched across the sky. Too many targets to engage, too much defensive fire to penetrate. And behind every raid, Curtis LeMay's mathematical mind was calculating exactly how much destruction was worth how many American lives. The calculation was always the same: destroy the target, whatever it costs. By mid-1944, German civilians recognized the LeMay formations. Tight, disciplined, unstoppable. When they saw those geometric patterns overhead, they knew their city was about to be deleted from the map. Because LeMay didn't bomb partially, he bombed completely. Hamburg, Dresden, Berlin. Not all of LeMay's direct operations, but all were influenced by his tactics, his philosophy, his ruthless understanding that strategic bombing only works if you're willing to burn entire cities to ash. A German civilian interviewed after the war, a former air raid warden in Munich, said, "We learned to tell which raids were planned by LeMay. The formations were tighter. The bombing is more concentrated. The fires larger. When we heard LeMay raid, people didn't go to shelters. They fled the city entirely because they knew nothing would survive." That's the definition of fear, when your enemy's name makes civilians abandon their homes. But here's what made LeMay truly dangerous from the German perspective. He was right. His tactics worked. His casualties were lower than those of other commanders. His targets were actually destroyed. His raids actually impacted German production. Everything he promised, he delivered. The Germans couldn't argue with the results, couldn't claim LeMay was incompetent or reckless or wasteful, because the numbers proved otherwise. He won. Efficiently. Brutally. But he won. And that's why he earned number 3 on the German list of most feared American generals. They feared him because he fought as they did. Total war. No mercy. No half measures. Just relentless destruction aimed at achieving specific objectives. LeMay was Manstein with bombers instead of panzers. And the Germans recognized it. One Luftwaffe general, interviewed by Allied historians in 1946, put it simply: LeMay understood war the way Germans understood war, as something to be won completely, regardless of cost. Most Americans seem to want to win while staying civilized. LeMay wanted to win, period. That made him the most German of all American generals, and therefore the most dangerous. But if LeMay was German in philosophy, number 2 was German in practice. The general who moved like lightning and hit harder than anyone except Patton himself. Number 2, Lieutenant General Lucian Truscott. Anzio Beachhead, February 1944. A German staff officer stares at reconnaissance photos. The American perimeter should have collapsed. 3 German divisions smashing against it. Overwhelming force, constant pressure. The Americans are outnumbered 3-1 in some sectors, but the line hasn't moved, not 1 meter. The staff officer checks the name of the American commander, Lieutenant General Lucian Truscott. He writes in his report, "This general understands defensive warfare better than we do. His positions are brilliantly chosen. His reserves are perfectly placed. His counterattacks were timed with precision. Who trained this man?" The answer would surprise him. Truscott trained himself by studying German tactics, by reading German field manuals captured in North Africa, by learning from the enemy and then beating them at their own game. Lucian Truscott was everything Terry Allen wasn't: polished, professional, respected by superiors. He looked like a general from central casting, tall, lean, with a cavalry officer's bearing and a voice that sounded like he gargled gravel. That voice came from screaming orders during training exercises where he pushed men beyond what they thought possible. The Germans learned about Truscott in Sicily. But they learned to fear him at Anzio. Sicily first. July 1943. Truscott commanded the 3rd Infantry Division. His orders were to land, secure the beachhead, and wait for reinforcement. Standard procedure. Cautious. Safe. Truscott ignored them. His division landed at Licata and immediately pushed inland. Didn't wait, didn't consolidate. Just moved. Fast. The Germans prepared to counterattack the beachhead and found Truscott's troops already 5 miles inland, already cutting roads, already behind German forward positions. A German regimental commander from the 15th Panzergrenadier Division reported to his superiors, "The American 3rd Division does not behave according to American doctrine. They move with German speed. Recommend treating this unit as equivalent to our best troops." That recommendation saved German lives, because underestimating Truscott got you killed. What made Truscott different was speed, but not just speed, sustained speed. The German blitzkrieg was fast, but relied on surprise and concentrated force. Once the enemy adapted, German advances slowed. Truscott never slowed. He trained his men to maintain pace indefinitely. He called it the Truscott Trot, a forced march pace of 5 miles per hour with full combat gear. Most armies marched at 2.5 to 3 miles per hour. Truscott's men moved nearly twice that fast, for hours, for days, without stopping. German commanders planning defensive positions calculated American arrival times based on standard march rates. Then Truscott's 3rd Infantry would appear 12 hours early. Already deployed, already attacking, before German reserves could arrive. Sicily proved this repeatedly. Palermo fell because Truscott got there first. Messina was nearly cut off because Truscott moved faster than German intelligence thought possible. By the time Sicily ended, German intelligence files on Truscott included warnings. This commander prioritizes mobility above all else. Standard timing calculations do not apply. But Sicily was preparation. Anzio was the masterpiece. January 1944. The Anzio landing was supposed to outflank German defensive lines in Italy, force a German retreat, maybe even threaten Rome. Instead, it became a disaster. The initial American commander, Major General John Lucas, landed and stopped, consolidated, waited for supplies, gave the Germans time to react, and the Germans reacted harshly. Albert Kesselring threw 8 divisions at the beachhead, surrounded it, began systematically crushing it. By early February, the Anzio beachhead was hours from total collapse. American troops were being pushed back into the sea. Then Eisenhower made one call: Truscott, take command, save it. Truscott arrived on February 23, 1944. He toured the front lines personally, talked to company commanders, examined German positions, and in 24 hours he redesigned the entire defense. He understood something fundamental. The beachhead was small, only 16 miles across at its widest. Germans expected Americans to defend everywhere equally. Spread thin, weak. Truscott did the opposite. He abandoned less critical sectors, pulled troops back from exposed positions, concentrated his forces into mobile reserves positioned behind the most threatened areas. Then he waited. When Germans attacked, he let them penetrate, just far enough. Then he hit them from 3 sides with concentrated armor and infantry moving at full speed. The first German assault after Truscott took command was the 3rd Panzergrenadier Division attacking toward Anzio town. They broke through the forward American lines, penetrated half a mile. Victory seemed close. Then Truscott sprung his trap. American Shermans hit from both flanks. Infantry from the 3rd Division, Truscott's old unit, attacked from the rear. The German spearhead was isolated, cut off, and systematically destroyed. 73 German tanks were knocked out. 2 entire battalions were wiped out. A captured German officer from that battle told interrogators, "We thought we had broken through." Then suddenly Americans were everywhere, attacking from all sides, moving faster than we could react. Who commands this defense? When told it was Truscott, the German officer nodded. "Ah, that explains it. He fights like a model, perfect reserves, perfect timing." That comparison to Field Marshal Walter Model, Germany's best defensive commander, was the highest compliment a German could give. February and March 1944 at Anzio were Germany's maximum effort. Kesselring committed everything: heavy artillery, Tiger tanks, elite units from the Eastern Front, Luftwaffe support. The beachhead should have collapsed. Every tactical calculation said it would collapse. It didn't. Truscott's defense held, not passively. He wasn't just absorbing German attacks. He was counterattacking constantly. Small, sharp attacks that disrupted German preparations. Raids that destroyed supply dumps. Armored thrusts that forced Germans to pull back and reorganize. He turned defense into offense without giving up defended ground. German battalion commanders began reporting something unusual. They would prepare attacks, bring up ammunition, and position troops. Then American artillery would hit the exact assembly area, or American infantry would raid the exact jumping-off point. Hours before the attack was supposed to begin, Truscott had infiltrated German radio networks. His intelligence officers were listening to German communications, reading German plans in real time. Then Truscott positioned his forces to counter attacks before they even started. A German intelligence report from March 1944 noted with frustration, "General Truscott appears to know our intentions before we execute them. Recommend radio silence and courier-only communications in sectors facing his forces." By late March 1944, the German offensive at Anzio had failed. Not just stopped, failed. Kesselring called off attacks. The beachhead was secure. Truscott had won. And the Germans added another note to their files: "General Truscott is a defensive genius. Do not attack his positions without overwhelming superiority. Even then, expect heavy losses." But Truscott wasn't done. May 1944, the breakout from Anzio. Truscott was ordered to break through German lines and link up with Allied forces pushing north from the main Italian front. His plan was perfect, fast, aggressive, classic Truscott. His superiors changed it, ordered him to attack toward Rome instead. A political objective, not a military one, Truscott argued, protested. Was overruled. He followed orders, but the Germans noticed. A Wehrmacht tactical assessment from June 1944 stated, Truscott's modified attack toward Rome was not his plan. Had he been allowed to execute his original operation, the 10th Army would have been trapped and destroyed. His superiors do not understand his abilities. That assessment was correct. Truscott's original plan would have trapped 100,000 German troops. The modified plan took Rome, but let the German army escape. The Germans respected Truscott enough to analyze his plans even when he lost. Because they knew, next time his superiors might let him do it his way. And next time, an entire German army might cease to exist. France, August 1944, Operation Dragoon, invasion of southern France. Truscott commanded VI Corps. His objective: land on the Riviera coast, secure the beaches, and link up with forces from Normandy. Standard plan, standard objectives. Truscott did it in half the expected time. His troops landed on August 15th. By August 17th, they were 20 miles inland. By August 20th, they'd captured Toulon and Marseille, ports the Germans expected to hold for weeks. By August 28th, Truscott's lead elements were approaching the German border. 2 weeks. What was supposed to take 2 months took 2 weeks. German commanders in southern France sent frantic reports to Berlin. VI Corps under Truscott is moving at unsustainable speeds. Recommend immediate reinforcement or complete withdrawal. Berlin chose withdrawal, because fighting Truscott when he was moving that fast was suicide. A German colonel from the 11th Panzer Division, captured during the retreat, said, "We called him the Blitz General." Not because he attacked like blitzkrieg, but because he moved faster than blitzkrieg. Our doctrine is based on speed and shock. Truscott's Americans matched our speed and exceeded our shock. How do you fight an enemy who has adopted your own tactics and improved them? The answer was, you don't. You retreat. You survive. You add his name to the list of American generals who fight like Germans. Truscott earned number 2 on that list. not for spectacular victories, not for massive battles, but for consistent excellence. For understanding German warfare so completely that he beat them at their own game. Speed, mobility, precise timing, perfect reserves. The Germans respected Truscott more than any other American general except one, because Truscott proved Americans could learn, could adapt, could take German doctrine and execute it better than the Germans did. And that terrified them, because if one American general could do it, maybe others would follow. But there was still one general the Germans feared more, one name that made Wehrmacht commanders rethink their plans. One American who didn't just fight like Germans, he fought better than the Germans. Number 1, General George S. Patton Jr., August 1944, Normandy. A German panzer officer named Hans von Luck receives new intelligence. The Americans have broken out of the hedgerows, captured Avranches, turned south toward Brittany. Von Luck looks at the map, studies American unit positions, sees one name commanding Third Army. Patton. He says it out loud. Patton. And every German officer in the room goes quiet, because they all know that name. They've known it since 1943, since Tunisia, since Sicily. They know what it means. It means everything is about to change. Everything is about to move impossibly fast. And the German army is about to be hit harder than anyone except the Red Army has hit them. Patton isn't just coming. Lightning is coming. George S. Patton Jr. was a contradiction wrapped in pearl-handled revolvers and four-star insignia. He was 60 years old in 1944, ancient by combat commander standards, but he moved like a 20-year-old cavalry officer charging into battle. He wrote poetry, studied history, believed in reincarnation. He'd fought in past wars as a Roman legionnaire and a Napoleonic marshal. His superiors thought he was crazy. His men thought he was brilliant. The Germans thought he was the most dangerous American in Europe. They were right. The Germans started tracking Patton in North Africa, Tunisia, March 1943. He took command of II Corps after the disaster at Kasserine Pass. American forces were demoralized, beaten. The Germans thought they were finished. Patton arrived. Within 2 weeks, II Corps was attacking, fast, aggressive, hitting German positions that intelligence said were too strong to assault, breaking through, advancing. The Germans suddenly found themselves fighting a completely different American army. A German intelligence report from April 1943 stated, II Corps has been transformed. New commander exhibits characteristics consistent with aggressive German mobile warfare doctrine. Unit discipline has improved. Attack speed has increased dramatically. Recommend treating this formation as equivalent to elite German units. That was after 2 weeks. After 2 months, the Germans revised their assessment. General Patton commands like Rommel, fast, unpredictable, willing to take enormous risks. His forces must be monitored constantly. He will exploit any gap immediately. Sicily. July 1943. Patton commanded the 7th Army. His mission, support Montgomery's 8th Army as they drove north toward Messina. Secondary role, support role, safe role. Patton ignored it. He turned the 7th Army loose, raced across Sicily, captured Palermo, then turned east and drove hell for leather toward Messina, not supporting Montgomery. Competing with him, and winning, American troops entered Messina hours before the British. Patton stood at the city limits waiting for Montgomery to arrive. It was petty, it was unprofessional, it was brilliant, because it proved Americans could move as fast as Germans, could outrace the British, could win through speed and aggression. The Germans noticed. A Wehrmacht assessment from August 1943. General Patton represents a new type of American commander. Previous American generals emphasized caution and overwhelming force. Patton emphasizes speed and shock. He has studied German mobile warfare doctrine and implemented it successfully. This is dangerous. If other American generals adopt his methods, the tactical advantage Germany maintains in mobile warfare will disappear. That assessment was prophetic, because Patton wasn't just succeeding. He was showing other Americans how to succeed, by moving fast, by hitting hard, by never, ever stopping. But then Patton screwed up. The slapping incidents, 2 soldiers, 2 field hospitals, 2 moments of rage that cost him command of 7th Army and nearly ended his career. Eisenhower benched him. The press crucified him. The American public turned against him. The Germans didn't believe it for a second. They knew Patton, knew his temperament, knew his value. They assumed the slapping incidents were a cover for something else, a deception operation. Because why would America sideline its best combat general over something so trivial? German intelligence kept tracking Patton's location. When he was sent to England in early 1944, they assumed he would command the D-Day invasion. Because obviously, you send your best general for your most important operation. And that assumption, that false assumption, became one of the Allies' greatest deception operations. Operation Fortitude. The plan to convince Germany that D-Day would land at Pas-de-Calais instead of Normandy. At its core was one man, Patton. He was given command of a fictitious army group, 1st United States Army Group, FUSAG. A ghost army that existed only on paper and in German intelligence reports. But the Germans believed it completely, because the Germans believed in Patton, believed he was too valuable to waste, believed he must be commanding the real invasion. So when Allied intelligence fed them reports of Patton in southeast England preparing FUSAG for an assault on Pas-de-Calais, the Germans bought it entirely. A German intelligence summary from May 1944 stated, Patton remains in England with major force concentration opposite Pas-de-Calais. This confirms Normandy is a diversionary operation. The main invasion will come at Calais under Patton's command. Recommend maintaining maximum force in the Pas-de-Calais sector. Hitler personally agreed. Keep divisions at Calais. Wait for Patton. The real attack will come where Patton commands. June 6, 1944. D-Day. Normandy, not Calais, and Patton was still in England. The Germans held divisions at Calais for weeks, waiting for Patton, refusing to believe Normandy was the real invasion because Patton wasn't there. That's not deception, that's worship. The Germans respected Patton so much that they restructured their entire defensive strategy around stopping him. And when Patton finally did arrive in France on July 6, 1944, taking command of 3rd Army, the German nightmare became real. August 1944. Operation Cobra. The breakout from Normandy. The 3rd Army under Patton was supposed to turn the German flank, drive south, capture Brittany ports, secure the Allied logistics line, standard operation, standard objectives, maybe 4 weeks to complete. Patton did it in 4 days. Then he kept going. 3rd Army didn't stop at Brittany. Patton turned his entire army east, aimed at Germany itself, and drove Avranches, Le Mans, Orléans, Chartres, Seine River. In 2 weeks, Patton's forces covered distances that took German armies months to cover during the 1940 invasion. German commanders couldn't believe the reports. American units appearing in towns that intelligence said they couldn't possibly reach for another week. Patton's spearheads outrun their own supply lines, living off captured German fuel, eating captured German rations, just moving, always moving. A German staff officer from Army Group B wrote in his diary, Patton has gone insane. His army is advancing faster than we retreated in 1940. His logistics are impossible. His risks are suicidal, and yet he continues. How? The answer was simple. Patton didn't care about logistics, didn't care about exposed flanks, didn't care about anything except forward momentum. Keep attacking, keep moving, make the enemy react. Never give them time to set up defenses or organize counterattacks. It was a blitzkrieg, pure blitzkrieg. The Germans were being beaten by their own doctrine, executed by an American general who understood it better than most German generals did. By late August 1944, the 3rd Army had covered 600 miles, liberated most of France, destroyed 7 German divisions, captured 100,000 German prisoners, and terrified every German officer from Normandy to Berlin. Alfred Jodl, chief of German operations staff, told Hitler directly, Patton is the Allies' best general. He fights like Rommel, fast, aggressive, unpredictable. We must stop him before he reaches Germany. Hitler agreed, prioritized stopping Patton. Shift reserves to face the Third Army, pulled troops from other sectors because Patton was the real threat. But stopping Patton required fuel, and Patton had run out. September 1944. The Third Army ground to a halt, not because of German resistance, because of gasoline. Patton's advance had outrun Allied logistics. His tanks were stationary, his trucks were empty. He was 50 miles from the German border, and he couldn't move. German commanders breathed a sigh of relief. Finally, a chance to reorganize, to fortify, to prepare defenses before Patton started moving again. That breathing space saved the German army for months, because when fuel finally arrived, winter had come, the weather had turned, and mobile warfare became impossible, even for Patton. But December 1944 brought one final demonstration of why the Germans feared Patton more than anyone else. The Battle of the Bulge, Hitler's last great offensive, catch the Americans by surprise, split the Allied line, drive to Antwerp, force a negotiated peace. It almost worked. The Germans achieved complete surprise, smashed through American lines, created a massive bulge in the Allied front, and trapped the 101st Airborne at Bastogne. Allied commanders panicked, called meetings, discussed options, argued about responses. Eisenhower asked his generals, who can counterattack? Patton said, I can. Eisenhower asked, when? Patton said, 48 hours. The room went silent. The Third Army was 90 miles away, facing south, actively engaged with German forces, and Patton was claiming he could disengage, turn 90 degrees, march 90 miles through winter weather, and attack the most powerful German offensive since 1940. In 2 days, every general in the room knew it was impossible, except Patton. Because Patton had already planned for it, before the meeting, before the attack, before anyone knew the bulge would happen. Patton studied maps constantly, planned for every contingency. And 3 days before the bulge began, he told his staff, the Germans are going to attack, probably through the Ardennes. Have plans ready to turn the entire army north. We'll need to move fast. His staff thought he was crazy, prepared the plans anyway, because Patton was always right about German intentions. December 22, 1944, 48 hours after Eisenhower's meeting. The Third Army attacked into the southern flank of the bulge, exactly as Patton promised. 3 divisions, 133,000 men, hundreds of tanks, all turned 90 degrees, marched 90 miles, and attacked in winter weather. The Germans couldn't believe it, couldn't understand it, couldn't stop it. A German commander from the 5th Parachute Division, captured after the battle, told interrogators, we knew Patton was south of us. We knew he was engaged with other forces. We calculated he couldn't possibly reach us for a week, maybe 2 weeks. Then, on December 22nd, his tanks appeared. Not scouts, not advance guards, his entire army. In 48 hours, he had performed a maneuver that would take German armies a week. How is this possible? The interrogator wrote. Subject became agitated when discussing Patton, repeated the word unmöglich, impossible, 7 times. Appears genuinely shaken by Third Army's operational speed. That was Patton's true weapon, not firepower, not numbers, speed. Operational speed that made enemy calculations meaningless. If the enemy thought Patton needed a week, he arrived in 2 days. If they thought he'd attack frontally, he hit them from the flank. If they thought they were safe, they weren't. Patton relieved Bastogne, smashed the southern shoulder of the bulge, and by January 1945, the German offensive was finished, destroyed. Tens of thousands of German casualties. Hundreds of tanks were lost, and Germany's last strategic reserve is exhausted, all because Patton moved faster than physics should allow. The final months of the war were a Patton showcase. The Third Army crossed the Rhine, drove into Germany, covered 1,000 miles in 281 days of combat, killed or wounded 500,000 German soldiers, captured 1 million more. and did it all with fewer casualties than any other American army, because Patton understood the fundamental truth of warfare. The best defense is speed. If you're moving fast enough, the enemy can't kill you. They can't even target you. You're already somewhere else, already hitting them from a new direction. German generals after the war were asked, which Allied general did you fear most? The answer was unanimous. Patton. Gunther Blumentritt, chief of staff to several German field marshals, said, "We regarded Patton with apprehension. He was the most aggressive panzer general the Americans possessed. He was the best commander the Allies had. His operations were lightning quick and shrewdly calculated. Patton was a master of warfare." Alfred Jodl said it more simply, "Patton was our Rommel." But perhaps the most telling assessment came from a junior German officer captured in April 1945, an anonymous lieutenant from the 352nd Volksgrenadier Division, interviewed by American intelligence. Asked which American general he feared most, he said, "Patton, always Patton." Because when you heard Patton was coming, you knew you had two choices, retreat or die. There was no third option. He gave you no time to think, no time to prepare, no time to do anything except run or fight. And fighting Patton meant dying, so we ran. Every time, as fast as we could, and half the time he was still faster. That's fear, pure fear, when the enemy would rather run than fight because fighting means certain death. George S. Patton, Jr. Earned the #1 spot on the German list of most feared American generals because he not only understood mobile warfare, he perfected it. He took everything the Germans invented, speed, shock, aggression, exploitation, and executed it better than they ever did. The Germans created blitzkrieg. Patton weaponized it and turned it back on them with a fury they couldn't match and couldn't stop. 358 days of combat command, 1 million miles traveled, 7 countries liberated, and a legacy that made German generals wake up at night thinking, thank God there was only one of him. These were the 5 American generals the Germans feared most. Van Fleet with his industrial artillery, LeMay with his burning cities, Truscott with his German speed, Terry Allen with his night attacks, and Patton, always Patton, the cavalryman who brought lightning to the battlefield and never, ever stopped moving. They came from different backgrounds, fought in different ways, had different personalities, but they shared one trait the Germans recognized immediately. They understood war the way Germans understood war, as something to be won completely, through speed, through shock, through relentless forward momentum that gave the enemy no rest, no time, no mercy. The Germans didn't fear these men because they were American. They feared them because they were excellent, because excellence transcends nationality. And these 5 Americans were excellent at the one thing the Wehrmacht respected above all else, winning. You've watched their stories. You've seen what made the most feared military in Europe fear them back. These men, these 5 Americans, proved that courage, aggression, and brilliance can come from anywhere, can beat anyone, can change history. They changed World War II. They changed warfare itself. And because of you watching, because of you remembering, because of you sharing their stories, Van Fleet, LeMay, Truscott, Allen, and Patton will never be forgotten. Drop a comment telling me where you're watching from. And which of these 5 generals do you think was truly the most dangerous? I want to know. If you were a German commander in 1944, which one would you fear most? Hit that like button. Subscribe for more forgotten heroes, and I'll see you in the next one. Because these stories matter, and they need to survive.